I stood beneath the arrival sign, suitcase handle digging into my palm, watching strangers embrace while the cold airport wind licked at my coat. My message had been read. Flight lands at 3 p.m. Can someone pick me up? I sent it to the family group chat. My son replied in 3 words. Take an Uber. After birthdays, babysitting, basement loans, I wasn't worth the drive. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The seatbelt light flicked on as the plane began its slow descent over Minneapolis. Afternoon sunlight spilled through the oval window, tinting Eleanor Moore's travel cup of ginger ale gold. The captain's voice murmured something about weather and arrival time, but her attention was already on her phone. She typed the message carefully, as if tone could be softened by punctuation. Flight lands at 3 p.m. Anyone able to pick me up? It went to the family group chat, the one with the tiny photo of her grandson in a Halloween costume. The Moors glowed at the top of the screen. She pressed send. 3 minutes passed. Nothing. The little read receipt appeared beneath her message. Brittany first, then Kyle. She watched the typing bubble flicker on, then vanish. Eleanor adjusted her scarf, pretending to check the time as passengers shuffled for the overhead bins. A man across the aisle was FaceTiming someone. His wife, maybe. And she could hear laughter, the easy kind that fills quiets. She envied that sound. Her phone buzzed. Finally. Brittany. Not a good time, crazy schedule. Another pause, another flicker of false hope. Then Kyle chimed in. Uber's probably your best bet, Mom. No emoji, no apology, just practical dismissal wrapped in modern convenience. Eleanor stared at the 2 messages, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. For a second, she considered replying something neutral. No problem. Or sure, I'll manage. But her chest tightened with something deeper than irritation. It was recognition. The line had been drawn long before this flight. She turned her phone face down on the tray table and stared out the window as the wheels hit the tarmac. The jolt rattled through her spine, but she didn't flinch. Not once. At baggage claim, the carousel clanked to life. Eleanor stood with her small rolling suitcase, her eyes scanning the crowd as if habit alone expected someone familiar. A husband, long gone. A son, too busy. A daughter-in-law, always curating her next post. The crowd thinned. The carousel creaked empty. She retrieved her bag, adjusted her cardigan, and wheeled toward the exit. A family of 4 passed by, laughing over spilled popcorn. The mother brushed crumbs from her child's chin. Eleanor smiled faintly, not from jealousy, but from memory. She used to do that once, before her affection became something her son outsourced. Outside, cold Minnesota air rushed against her cheeks. She opened the rideshare app. Estimated pickup, 6 minutes. While she waited, she spotted a familiar silver SUV slowing near the curb. Brittany's make and model. For half a breath, her heart leapt. But when the passenger window rolled down, it wasn't Brittany. It was her, Brittany's mother, waving cheerily at someone behind Eleanor. Kyle sat in the driver's seat, sunglasses on, laughing at something Brittany said. The SUV turned out of the airport loop and disappeared into the late-day traffic. Eleanor inhaled sharply through her nose, steady, deliberate. Then she smiled. The kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes but steadied her heartbeat. Her driver arrived, a young man with a baseball cap and a kind expression. You just get back in town, ma'am? Yes, she said, slipping into the back seat. Her voice was even, calm. Just visiting family. He nodded, merging into the lane. Nice. Big reunion or something? Eleanor looked out the window at the receding airport. Not quite. Silence settled between them, warm and merciful. As the car crossed the bridge into Woodbury, Eleanor's phone buzzed again. A new notification, Brittany posted a story. A boomerang of champagne glasses clinking, captioned, "Finally home weekend." Eleanor didn't open it. Instead, she reached into her tote bag, pulling out a slim envelope she'd tucked there days ago. Her estate plan, folded neatly. The paper had begun to crease at the edges, a little like her patience. She looked at her reflection in the window, composed, unbothered, but with something sharper now flickering beneath the surface. By the time the driver turned into her quiet cul-de-sac, the sun had sunk low enough to paint the neighborhood in amber. He parked by the curb. "We're here. Want me to help with your bag?" "No need," Eleanor said, handing him a tip in cash. "I've got it." She stepped out, the chill biting her cheeks, and stood there for a moment watching the fading light. Her phone buzzed one last time. A heart emoji from Marie, her neighbor. "Welcome home, traveler. Wine tonight?" Eleanor typed back, "Yes, and bring the good kind." Then she added another message, unsent, hovering just below it. "I think I got the message." She deleted it, locked her phone, and looked toward the darkening street. Something inside her shifted. Not broken, just rearranged. The rideshare smelled faintly of peppermint and stale coffee. Eleanor slid into the back seat, folding her coat neatly beside her. The driver, a young man with neat braids and a soft radio voice, adjusted the mirror. "Afternoon, Ms. Moore. We're heading to Woodbury?" She nodded. "That's right." The hum of the heater filled the space as the car merged into the slow crawl of airport traffic. Out the window, planes lifted into a pale winter sky, silver wings slicing through light that felt colder than it looked. They hadn't spoken more than 2 sentences when a car in the next lane caught her attention. Silver, gleaming, the same model Brittany drove. Her stomach tightened. The familiar SUV slowed just enough for her to see Kyle behind the wheel, sunglasses reflecting the sunlight. Brittany sat in the passenger seat, lips glossed, hair perfect, waving toward the window, but not at her. Eleanor followed the line of Brittany's wave to Brittany's mother, standing on the pickup curb with a rolling bag. The SUV door opened. Hugs. Laughter. The kind that floats too easily on cold air. Eleanor turned her gaze back to the dashboard. "Family trip?" the driver asked, friendly but oblivious. Eleanor's lips curved into something that might have been a smile in another life. "Not quite." He nodded, catching her tone. "Ah. Family's complicated." She met his eyes in the rearview mirror for a second. "That's one word for it." The traffic cleared. They crossed the bridge over the Mississippi, the skyline of Minneapolis shrinking behind them, clean glass towers reflecting a sky that promised snow. In the silence that followed, Eleanor let her mind replay that one small, decisive moment in the terminal. The SUV turning away, her son's laughter muted through rolled-up windows, the image nested somewhere deep, where disappointment stops stinging and starts hardening. By the time they reached her condo complex, the sun had slipped lower, throwing long, skeletal shadows across the snow-dusted lawns. The driver helped unload her small suitcase. "You have a good evening, ma'am." "I will," she said quietly. "Thank you for the ride." When the taillights disappeared, the stillness settled in, the kind of quiet that echoes after airports and crowds. She stood at the edge of her walkway, the sound of wind moving through bare branches above her. A sharp knock startled her. Marie Dawson, bundled in a red parka and carrying 2 grocery bags, grinned from the porch. "You look like you could use pasta and Pinot." Eleanor blinked, half laughing, half sighing. "You have uncanny timing. Decades of practice. I saw your taxi drive in." Marie set the bags on the counter inside, then gave her a once-over. "You look good, though, like someone who didn't strangle a flight attendant." Tempting, but no. Eleanor hung up her coat. The trip was fine. The arrival was instructive. Marie raised an eyebrow. "Instructive?" Eleanor took the corkscrew from the drawer, steady hands twisting it into the bottleneck. Let's just say, she poured 2 glasses. I think I got the message. Marie took a sip, eyes narrowing, waiting. They saw the text, Eleanor continued, voice calm but brittle at the edges. Both of them suggested I take an Uber, and then I watched them pick up her mother at the same airport. Marie set her glass down with a soft thud. That's not just inconsiderate. That's a declaration. Eleanor nodded. Exactly. They've been drawing lines for years. I just didn't want to see them. For a long moment, the only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the wall clock. Then Marie said evenly, "Well, message received." And noted. Eleanor smiled, not bitterly but with a strange clarity. I suppose it was overdue. Marie leaned back in her chair. What are you going to do about it? Eleanor swirled her wine, watching the liquid catch the kitchen light. For now, nothing. Nothing? Nothing they'll notice. Marie's laugh was low, knowing. That sounds like something. Eleanor's phone buzzed on the counter, a group chat notification she didn't open. Instead, she silenced it, placed it face down beside her glass, and said, almost to herself, I think that's the last text I'll ever send that goes unanswered. Outside, snow began to fall, slow, deliberate flakes catching the glow from the street lamp. Marie glanced toward the window. Storm's coming. Eleanor looked too, her reflection faint in the glass. Good, she said softly. Maybe it'll clear the air. Snow glazed the streets by morning, powdery and clean, erasing last night's tire tracks and replacing them with silence. Eleanor padded through her condo barefoot, the faint creak of the floorboards echoing against the hush. She made coffee, strong, black, and settled at the small kitchen table beside the window. The world outside was white and orderly. Inside, her phone blinked with something less peaceful. One new notification. She tapped the screen. Brittany's Facebook post filled it instantly. Post-airport catch-up. The image stopped her mid-sip. There they were, Kyle, Brittany, Aiden, and Brittany's parents, gathered around the long walnut dining table she'd helped pick out 2 years ago. 12 chairs, candles lit, a roast glistening in the center. Kyle's arm draped around Brittany's shoulders. Aiden half smiling, half forced. Every detail shimmered with practiced comfort. Her chest didn't ache this time. It calcified. Eleanor enlarged the photo, scanning it like evidence. Her eyes found what they always found. Omission. No trace of her. Not even her favorite serving dish, the one she'd given Brittany at Christmas. Brittany had captioned it, "Finally home, surrounded by love." Eleanor stared at the word surrounded. She almost laughed. Almost. She clicked through the comments, a parade of compliments and heart emojis. Such a beautiful family. So blessed. Someone wrote, "Where's Kyle's mom? I thought she was back today." Brittany replied, "She's resting. She travels a lot." The lie was clean, quick, disposable. Eleanor set the phone down. The coffee had gone cold. She made dinner anyway. Habit more than hunger. 1 salmon fillet, 1 glass of wine, 1 plate placed at the end of her otherwise empty table. She lit a candle out of defiance, not romance. The flame wobbled against the draft from the vent. Her condo smelled faintly of lemon oil and the ghost of last night's pasta. She sat, fork poised, eyes tracing the untouched place opposite her. For years she'd filled it with expectation. Kyle stopping by, Aiden visiting after school, Brittany tolerating the invitation. But the seat stayed empty so often it had begun to take on shape, absence with edges. The first bite of salmon was dry. She didn't finish it. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Marie's voice came muffled through the door. "I come bearing sugar and gossip." Eleanor exhaled through her nose, a smile forming despite herself. She opened the door to find Marie holding a pie and wearing her habitual smirk. "Apple crumble," Marie announced. "Bribery for company." Eleanor stepped aside. "You never need bribery." "Please," Marie said, setting the pie on the counter. "Everyone needs bribery. It's how civilization works." Eleanor gestured to the half-set table. "You're just in time for the post-dinner solitude." Marie followed her gaze to the single plate, then to the phone still glowing on the counter. The family photo frozen on its screen. "Oh, sweetheart." Marie's tone dropped, the humor thinning. "They did it again, didn't they?" Eleanor didn't answer. She didn't need to. Marie poured 2 slivers of wine into mismatched glasses. "You know, it's one thing to forget someone's birthday, but to stage a whole family dinner like you don't exist?" "They're good at staging," Eleanor murmured. Marie's eyes softened, but her voice sharpened. "They treat you like luggage, not legacy." Eleanor froze mid-sip. The line landed with surgical precision. Not cruel, just true. For a moment, neither woman spoke. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, the snow thickened. Finally, Eleanor stood and walked to her hall closet. She reached to the top shelf, moving aside travel folders and an old box of postcards. Her fingers closed around a slim, dust-coated binder, cream leather, edges worn. She carried it back to the table, laid it flat, and opened the cover. Inside were documents neatly labeled, Estate Plan, Eleanor Emma Moore. Marie watched, brow furrowed. "What are you doing?" Eleanor's voice was steady. "Looking at my options." She flipped through the pages, scanning names, signatures, dates. Her own handwriting from years ago, gentle, trusting, foolish. "You sure you want to open that tonight?" Marie asked. Eleanor met her friend's eyes. "I'm sure I don't want to keep pretending tomorrow looks the same as yesterday." Marie leaned forward, a slow grin forming. "Now that sounds like a woman who's finally done being polite." Eleanor traced her fingertip along the line listing Kyle's name as primary beneficiary. The ink hadn't faded, but her attachment to it had. She closed the folder gently, as if sealing something irreversible. "Marie," she said quietly, "pour me another glass." Marie obeyed without question. As the wine filled the glass, the snow outside thickened, swallowing the world in white. The candle guttered once, then steadied. The snow from last night had hardened into a brittle crust, shining like glass across the lawns of Woodbury. Eleanor watched it from her living room window, a mug of tea cooling in her hands. Morning light filtered through sheer curtains, catching the pale gold in her hair and the faint lines around her mouth. The kind of lines earned from years of waiting for gratitude that never came. Her eyes drifted toward the cream leather binder still sitting on the table. She hadn't put it away. She couldn't. Every page in that folder whispered a version of her life that no longer existed. Generosity mistaken for obligation, kindness mistaken for currency. She took a slow sip of tea and, unbidden, a number surfaced in her mind. $28,000. That was what she had transferred to Kyle's account 2 years ago. He'd called it a loan. Brittany had called it a blessing. It was supposed to help them refinish their basement, make room for Aiden's creative space. Eleanor remembered how proud she'd been when the contractor sent progress photos. Polished floors, a sleek entertainment unit, a bright white ceiling fan spinning above new carpet. The basement had turned into a home theater. She'd never seen it in person. Later that morning, Marie appeared at the door again, bundled in fleece, carrying a steaming paper bag. "Emergency muffins," she said. "They were lonely on the bakery shelf." Eleanor smiled faintly. "You have a rescue complex, you know that?" "Only with carbs," Marie said, stepping inside. "So, did you sleep? Or did you sit here plotting until sunrise?" Eleanor didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked to the kitchen table, picked up her tablet, and pulled up her banking app. One scroll through old transactions, and there it was, the transfer. She tapped the note field. For basement project. Repayment optional. She let out a quiet, humorless laugh. Optional, she repeated. Marie leaned over her shoulder. That's the kind of optional that never comes back. They never mentioned it again, Eleanor said. Not once. Did they at least say, thank you? Eleanor looked up slowly, her eyes dry. They said, you're the best, Mom, while Brittany held out the phone to show me paint samples. That was the last time the subject ever came up. Marie slid into the chair across from her. You know, she made a joke at that 4th of July barbecue, remember? About you being the family ATM, no PIN required. Eleanor's expression didn't shift. Yes, I remember. Marie tilted her head. That wasn't a joke. That was a confession. The words hung between them, sharp and airless. Eleanor set down her mug, the faint clink echoing in the still room. She rose, crossed to her desk, and pulled open the drawer. From it, she took an old business card, navy blue, embossed with silver script. Cheryl Diaz, certified retirement and estate advisor. She'd met Cheryl years ago through a community seminar, back when estate planning felt theoretical. Back when she still believed the word family guaranteed integrity. Eleanor turned the card over. The ink from Cheryl's handwritten cell number had faded slightly, but it was legible. Marie watched, eyes glinting. You're calling her, aren't you? Eleanor nodded. It's time to restructure things. Marie exhaled, half a whistle. Now we're getting somewhere. Eleanor dialed. Cheryl answered on the second ring, her voice calm, deliberate, the kind that could steady storm water. Eleanor, it's been a while, Cheryl said. Everything all right? I think so, Eleanor replied, though my definition of all right may be evolving. I'm listening. Eleanor moved to the window, watching a snowplow scrape its way down the street. I need to review my portfolio and estate documents, quietly, no updates on shared accounts, no digital notifications. There was a pause. Then Cheryl said, no paper trail? Not yet. Just preparation. Understood, Cheryl said. How soon? Eleanor's reflection in the glass looked foreign. Older, yes, but also steadier. Tomorrow afternoon, if you're available. I'll make it work, Cheryl said. Bring only what you want rewritten. Everything, Eleanor said softly. When she ended the call, the quiet pressed back in, not suffocating, but clarifying. Marie had moved to the couch, muffin half-eaten, watching her friend with the cautious admiration reserved for someone crossing a line they can't uncross. You sure you're ready for this? She asked. Eleanor turned, her voice low but precise. Ready stopped being the point. Necessary is. Marie smiled. There she is. Eleanor sat beside her, their shoulders nearly touching, and looked once more at the snow outside. A clean, unbroken surface, waiting to be marked. The wind off the river had a knife's edge that morning, slicing between the downtown towers and stinging Eleanor's cheeks as she crossed the street. The sky was pewter, the kind that threatened snow but hadn't decided when. She tightened her scarf and stepped into the glass building that housed Diaz Financial Strategies. The elevator chimed softly, its reflection catching the steady calm in her face. Not defiance, not anger. Precision. When the doors opened on the 10th floor, Cheryl was already waiting in the hall, folder in hand. Eleanor, she said warmly, extending her hand. It's good to see you. You look resolved. Eleanor's lips twitched. I suppose that's the word. Cheryl's office smelled faintly of eucalyptus and coffee. It was minimalist, pale wood, a single fern, and framed quotes that avoided sentiment. the kind of space that invited decisions. Eleanor sank into the leather chair opposite the desk while Cheryl clicked the blinds half closed, sealing out the city's noise. "Let's get started," Cheryl said. Paper whispered against paper as the first folder opened. Eleanor's name appeared in bold on every page, signatures she recognized, choices she'd once made with trust instead of scrutiny. Cheryl passed her a pen. "Let's go line by line," she said. "We'll start with your current beneficiaries." Eleanor adjusted her glasses. The first name glared up at her. Kyle Moore, primary heir. Beneath it, Brittany Moore, secondary. Her pen hovered for only a moment. Then, with steady pressure, she drew a clean stroke through both names. The ink was dark. Final. Cheryl looked up, eyes thoughtful. "Any substitutions?" "Yes," Eleanor said, voice clear. "Aiden's education fund gets the primary allocation. The remainder should go to local programs. Senior travel grants, single-parent scholarships. No residual to Kyle or Brittany." Cheryl's pen moved swiftly. "That's going to change the structure significantly. Are you sure you want to—" "I'm sure," Eleanor interrupted gently. "I spent years confusing access with affection. I won't make that mistake again." Cheryl smiled faintly, jotting notes. "That's a powerful way to put it." Eleanor continued reading the clauses. She paused when she reached emergency contact and executor of health directives. Kyle's name sat there like an accusation. "Remove him," she said. "Would you like to designate a replacement?" Cheryl asked. "Marie Dawson," Eleanor replied without hesitation. "She's earned that trust." Cheryl typed it in, then turned the monitor so Eleanor could review the changes. "You understand, of course. This means all financial notifications, healthcare decisions, and legal communications bypass Kyle entirely." Eleanor leaned back. "Good." For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, a snowflake brushed the window and melted instantly. Cheryl broke the silence first. "I've worked with a lot of clients in this chair," she said quietly. "Most of them think they're cutting people off, but you're not." Eleanor looked at her, one brow raised. "You're cutting yourself free," Cheryl finished. The words landed like a gavel. Firm, inevitable, right. Eleanor exhaled slowly, a warmth spreading in her chest she hadn't felt in weeks. "That's the truth of it, isn't it?" "It usually is," Cheryl said. Eleanor signed the final page, looping her initials neatly beside each revision. When the last document was done, she set the pen down carefully, as though closing a door. Cheryl gathered the papers. "We'll keep everything off the record until you decide otherwise. No emails, no shared accounts. Just preparation." "Thank you," Eleanor said, meaning it. Cheryl smiled. "For what it's worth, this is one of the cleanest breakouts I've ever seen." Eleanor's lips curved, not the polite smile she offered at dinner tables, but something lighter. "Maybe that's because it's the first one I've done for myself." Outside, the snow had started falling in earnest. Eleanor zipped her coat and stepped into the streetlight's glow, each flake catching briefly before dissolving. She walked slowly toward the parking garage, her boots leaving sharp, confident prints behind her. By the time she reached her car, her phone buzzed in her purse. A family group message lighting up the screen. "Brittany, we'd love to have you next weekend," Aiden insisted. Eleanor stared at it for a long moment, her breath clouding the air. The timing was almost surgical. Her thumb hovered over the screen, but she didn't type. Instead, she turned the phone face down on the passenger seat and started the car. The heater kicked in, humming low. Outside, the snow thickened, swallowing the skyline. For the first time in weeks, Eleanor smiled, quietly, to herself, and whispered, "Let them wonder who's in control now." Saturday arrived under a brittle winter sun, all shine, no warmth. Eleanor parked 2 houses down from Kyle and Brittany's place, letting the engine idle before she cut it. Their driveway was a small pageant of suburban success. Two spotless SUVs, one with a vanity plate that read Be More, the other rimmed in chrome. She sat for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, pulse steady, but alert. The text from Brittany had been suspiciously cheery. "We'd love to have you next weekend," Aiden insisted. Which was exactly the kind of invitation you issue when someone else's conscience forces your hand. Eleanor had accepted, not to mend fences, but to see the grain of the wood she was about to splinter. She stepped out of the car, boots crunching through thin ice. The sound was sharp, almost surgical. Brittany opened the door before Eleanor even rang. "Eleanor, you made it." Her voice was sugared high, the kind of tone people use when they're performing friendliness for witnesses. Inside, the house gleamed like a catalog spread. Candles, fresh tulips, a charcuterie board that looked professionally arranged. The air smelled faintly of cedar and lemon. Expensive cleanliness. Aiden's footsteps thundered from upstairs. "Grandma!" Eleanor's composure softened for the first time all day as he barreled into her, arms wrapping her waist tight. She knelt, pressing her cheek to his hair. "There's my favorite person," she whispered. He grinned, missing a front tooth. "I told them to invite you. I said it wasn't fair." Her throat tightened. "Then I'm glad you did." Brittany's smile wavered briefly before snapping back in place. "Isn't he sweet? He's been asking about you all week." Eleanor rose, brushing imaginary lint from her coat. "He's a thoughtful boy. Takes after his grandmother." Kyle appeared in the kitchen doorway, sleeves rolled to his elbows, phone in hand. "Hey, Mom. Glad you could come." His tone was practiced. The bare minimum of civility stretched thin over distraction. "Of course," Eleanor said, her voice polite but surgical. "Wouldn't miss it." They sat around the table, the same one from the post-airport catch-up photo Brittany had posted days earlier. The roast glistened again, predictably perfect. Eleanor took in the details: new artwork on the walls, a glossy rug underfoot, and, yes, the faint echo of her own money in every corner of the renovated space. "So," Brittany began, pouring wine into Eleanor's glass with the exaggerated care of a woman rehearsing graciousness. "How was the Uber last time? Not too rough, I hope." Kyle chuckled without looking up from his phone. Eleanor met Brittany's eyes and smiled thinly. "Smooth ride, though I did see a familiar SUV heading the other direction." For a heartbeat, the air froze. Brittany's laugh came a shade too late. "Oh, that must have been my mom. We picked her up that day. Total coincidence." "Of course," Eleanor said mildly. "Life's full of them." Aiden glanced between them, sensing the static. "Grandma, did you bring the cookies you make? The ones with the cinnamon?" "Next time," Eleanor said softly. "Today, I'm just visiting." Brittany clasped her hands, her rings catching the light. "You must be keeping busy these days, huh? All your traveling, all those projects." Eleanor tilted her head. "Something like that." Kyle finally looked up. "Yeah, we were actually wondering. You've been reorganizing things, right? You mentioned your advisor a while back?" "Cheryl," Eleanor confirmed evenly. "Yes, she's been helping me simplify." "Oh, simplify," Brittany repeated, her tone feather-light but edged. "That's smart. You've got, what, all those accounts? The condo? Retirement funds? Must be a handful." Eleanor dabbed her napkin against her lips. "Not really. I've been streamlining. Keeping what matters." "Streamlining?" Kyle echoed, pretending it was casual but failing to disguise the pulse in his temple. Eleanor looked between them, her voice calm and unhurried. "It's amazing what you find when you look closely at the fine print. Things you thought were permanent. Things that were never really yours to begin with." Brittany gave a brittle laugh. "You sound like you're narrating a documentary." "Maybe I am," Eleanor said, eyes steady. About inheritance. Or entitlement. I forget which. Aiden shifted uncomfortably. Can I show Grandma the fort I made downstairs? Yes, Eleanor said quickly, rising. I'd love that. She followed him down to the basement, the gleaming movie theater basement. The one her money had built. The air down there was cooler. The light dimmer. The smell of new carpet still faintly sharp. Aiden tugged her hand toward a blanket fort in the corner, proud and innocent. Mom doesn't like when I mess up the pillows, he whispered. She'll survive, Eleanor said softly. You just keep building. When they came back upstairs, the table had been cleared. Kyle and Brittany stood near the sink, their voices low, cutting off when they saw her. Eleanor picked up her coat from the chair. Thank you for dinner, she said. And for the invitation. Of course, Brittany chirped. We should do this more often. Eleanor smiled faintly. We'll see. Aiden hugged her again, fiercely this time. I'm glad you came. Me too, sweetheart, she whispered. Outside, the air bit at her skin, and the night smelled faintly of smoke from a nearby fireplace. Her phone buzzed in her pocket as she walked to her car, a notification from her banking app confirming Cheryl's secure update. Eleanor slid into the driver's seat and glanced once back at the glowing windows of the Moore house. 2 days after that dinner, the first real snowstorm of February swept through Minneapolis, blanketing the city in a hush that made even the highways sound polite. Eleanor sat by the window with a cup of coffee, her phone vibrating softly on the table. It was a text from Aiden. Can I come over sometime this weekend? Just me? She smiled, her heart warming before her mind could intervene. Of course, sweetheart. Anytime. He showed up Saturday afternoon, bundled in a puffer coat too big for him, carrying a backpack that clinked faintly when he moved. Brittany's SUV idled at the curb, engine running, exhaust puffing into the cold. Brittany waved without getting out. Eleanor waved back once and shut the door. Got snacks? Aiden asked, dropping his bag with the confidence of someone who already knew the answer. Pantry's still a safe haven, Eleanor said. Go look. He returned with pretzels and a can of root beer, plopped onto the couch, and for a few minutes they just watched the snow swirl against the windows, the silence comfortable, honest. Then he said it, the sentence that cracked the air between them. I asked them to pick you up from the airport. Eleanor froze mid-sip. Aiden looked down at the pretzels. I told them it wasn't far and that I wanted to come with. Mom said no. She said you'd rather do your own thing. Eleanor's voice came soft, steady. I know, sweetheart. He frowned. You did? She reached out, brushing a stray curl from his forehead. I did. And it's okay. Grown-ups make choices. Sometimes they're the wrong ones. Aiden chewed on that, the way kids do when they're filing something away for later truth. Dad said they were busy that day, but they picked up Nana instead. I saw the photo. Eleanor inhaled slowly, the kind of breath that smooths out the tremor hiding underneath. You're a smart boy, Aiden. Smarter than they realize. He leaned against her shoulder, the trust in the gesture both heavy and holy. I just didn't want you to think I forgot. Eleanor kissed the top of his head. I never thought that. After that visit, something shifted. Eleanor started showing up at his school events again. Quietly, without fanfare, sitting near the back of the gym or the far end of the bleachers. She didn't announce her presence to Kyle or Brittany. She didn't have to. Aiden's eyes always found hers first. She attended the winter concert, clapping politely when his class sang, "This Little Light of Mine." She went to the basketball fundraiser, cheering when his team scored their first basket. Each time, Brittany's tight smile across the crowd tried to pretend none of it was awkward, that Eleanor wasn't reclaiming ground inch by inch. Parents noticed. They always did. At the refreshment table after the concert, a woman Eleanor vaguely recognized, Aiden's friend's mother maybe, smiled and said, "It's so nice to see you here again. We haven't seen you at many of the family things lately." Eleanor stirred her coffee. "My seat was taken," she said lightly. The woman laughed politely, assuming humor where there was none. Later, in the parking lot, snowflakes fell like static under the floodlights. Marie's car pulled up beside her. She rolled down the window, steam fogging the glass. "There you are," she said. "I was wondering if you'd actually show your face." Eleanor grinned faintly. "Seems it still fits." Marie leaned her elbow on the steering wheel. "So? How was the show?" "Honest," Eleanor said. "Uncomplicated. He looked for me the second he got on stage." "That kid's got heart," Marie said. "Too bad he's surrounded by people trying to sell theirs." Eleanor gave a small laugh. "You always did know how to twist the knife." Marie shrugged. "You taught me." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the heater humming, the snow thickening. Then Marie said, "Next time, host your own table." Eleanor turned toward her, brow lifting. "Meaning?" "Stop waiting for a seat in their house," Marie said. "Build your own damn dining room." Eleanor's smile spread slowly, deliberately. "You know, I think I just might." Marie reached over and patted her gloved hand. "Good, because I'm bringing dessert." That night, back home, Eleanor pulled out a blank notebook from her drawer, the same one she used for trip planning years ago. She flipped past pages labeled Arizona, Maine, Santa Fe, and stopped on a clean sheet. At the top, she wrote in careful, steady handwriting, "New table. New rules." By May, Minneapolis had thawed into something deceptively gentle. Lawns turned soft again, patios filled with laughter, and the city pretended winter had never existed. But Eleanor knew better. Snow might melt. Silence never did. On Mother's Day morning, she woke to sunlight warming her face and the faint ping of her phone. The group text icon glowed with one new message, "Brittany." She didn't open it right away. She brewed her coffee, sliced a pear, and carried both to the balcony. The air smelled of lilacs and wet earth. She told herself not to look. Then she did. The message was a link to Brittany's newest Facebook post. "Happy Mother's Day to the women who built me." A collage filled the screen. 6 photos arranged with manic precision. Brittany and her mother laughing over mimosas. Brittany and Aiden holding a bouquet. Kyle kissing Brittany's forehead. Aiden giving Brittany breakfast in bed. Every image framed Brittany or her mother in golden light. Eleanor wasn't in a single one. She scrolled down through the comments, co-workers, neighbors, friends. "So beautiful. Such a perfect family. Love this." Then one caught her attention. "Where's Kyle's mom? I thought she lived nearby?" Brittany replied 3 minutes later. "Oh, she travels too much. Hard to keep up." The lie sat on the screen like something alive. Eleanor stared at it, her thumb hovering over the comment section. She thought about replying, something mild, cutting, factual. But no, that wasn't the kind of story she wanted to write anymore. She closed the app, the faint tremor of adrenaline easing into something colder, steadier. At noon, Marie appeared with a wrapped box and 2 bagels. "Brunch delivery for my favorite honorary mom," she announced. Eleanor smiled. "You're early." "I was bored and the internet's full of Mother's Day propaganda," Marie said, flopping onto the couch. "Did you see her post yet?" Eleanor didn't need to ask who. "I did." Marie tore open her bagel, shaking her head. "That woman would erase you from the family tree if Photoshop offered the feature." "She already did," Eleanor said evenly. Marie studied her. "And yet you look fine." Eleanor shrugged. Because I'm not in their picture, Marie. I'm framing my own. That afternoon, Eleanor worked at her dining table with quiet focus. She spread out travel photos from the last decade. Arizona sunsets, Maine harbors, street markets in Italy, snow-capped mountains she'd hiked alone. The images looked nothing like loss. They looked like proof. She began arranging them into a scrapbook. Simple linen cover, clean layout, each page annotated in her careful handwriting. Next to a photo of the Grand Canyon. You see more clearly when you stand alone. She smiled at the line, not as bitterness, but recognition. Midway through the process, she reached a thin envelope tucked between photo sleeves. Property records from the family ranch in Brainerd, the one her parents had left her decades ago. She flipped through the papers, confirming what she already knew. It was still in her name, every acre of it. Brittany had always referred to it as the family place, assuming inclusion meant ownership. Eleanor had let her believe it. Until now. She slid one of the deed photos into the scrapbook, just beneath a snapshot of Aiden helping her feed horses during his one childhood visit there. Underneath it, she wrote in steady, blue ink, "Still ours, legally and otherwise." When she finished, the book was thick with evidence, not of wealth or travel, but of a woman who had kept living while everyone else edited her out. She wrapped it in brown paper and tied it with twine. On the tag, she wrote only, "To Aiden, from Grandma, for when you're ready to see the whole picture." That evening, as dusk fell over the quiet cul-de-sac, Eleanor placed the package on her porch railing. She texted Kyle's number. The first message in months. "Aiden left his sweatshirt here last time. I've wrapped something for him. Please pick it up tonight." No response. None expected. By 9 p.m., headlights swept across her window. Brittany's SUV idled out front. Eleanor watched through the curtain as Brittany stepped out, grabbed the package, and hesitated. She turned it over, reading the tag, her mouth tightening. For one flicker of a moment. Their eyes met through the glass. Brittany's expression held something like confusion, or fear of what she didn't yet understand. Eleanor lifted her mug in a silent toast. The invitation had arrived on glossy cardstock. "Baby shower for Brittany and baby-to-be." Embossed with gold script and fake warmth. It wasn't even addressed by hand. The printed label read E. Moore, as if she were a distant relative rather than the mother whose savings built their perfect home theater. Marie had waved it in the air like a red flag. "You're not seriously going, are you?" Eleanor had smiled, slow and deliberate. "Oh, I'm going," she said. "Just not for the cake." The shower was held at a boutique event space in Edina. Chandeliers, satin chair covers, a dessert table that looked like a jewelry display. The room hummed with the syrupy laughter of Brittany's friends and coworkers, the kind of crowd that documented affection in curated snippets. Eleanor walked in quietly, her coat draped neatly over one arm, her other hand clutching a single envelope. No gift bag, no bouquet, no pretense. At first, no one noticed her. That was fine. She preferred it that way. She stood near the edge of the crowd, watching as Brittany glided between tables, a pastel ribbon pinned to her dress, camera-ready smile fixed in place. Kyle lingered nearby, talking to someone about home equity or weekend golf plans. The language of small lives pretending to be big ones. Then Aiden spotted her. He froze, eyes lighting up, and waved. "Grandma!" Brittany's head whipped around, the brightness of her smile dimming for half a heartbeat before she turned it back on. "Mom, you made it." The room quieted slightly, the way it does when uninvited truth enters a party. Eleanor returned the smile, soft, but immovable. "Of course. Wouldn't miss it." Brittany's friends shifted uncomfortably, unsure of how to recalibrate their cheer. Kyle stepped forward, his charm faltering just enough for her to see it. Glad you could come, he said, almost managing sincerity. Eleanor extended the envelope toward him. I brought something special. He blinked. You didn't have to. Oh, I did, she said evenly. It's not a gift. It's an adjustment. Kyle hesitated, then took it, his fingers brushing the thick, cream-colored paper. He frowned at the weight of it, the kind that comes from intention, not greeting cards. She watched his eyes narrow as he unfolded the document. His voice came out quieter than she'd expected. What is this? A formal notice, Eleanor said. Everything I've transferred to your name, the so-called gifts, the basement fund, the property shares. I'm reclaiming them. State law allows it when intent is misrepresented. My attorney filed the preliminary motion yesterday. Brittany's face drained of color. You're ruining this, she hissed. Eleanor met her gaze, steady and cold as glass. No, she said softly. I'm redrawing the boundary. The room had gone almost silent now, save for the tinkling of a fork dropped into a champagne glass. A few of Brittany's friends exchanged looks, unsure if they were witnessing family business or performance art. Kyle's jaw tightened. You can't just... I already did, Eleanor interrupted. You'll get a call from Cheryl's office by Monday. She'll explain the terms. Mom, you don't understand how this looks, he said, lowering his voice. Oh, I do, Eleanor said. It looks overdue. She turned to Aiden, who was still watching her with wide, uncertain eyes. Sweetheart, I'll see you soon, okay? He nodded, quiet, instinctively understanding more than the adults around him. Brittany started to speak again, something brittle and panicked forming behind her lips, but Eleanor didn't wait to hear it. She simply gave a small nod to the room, polite, final, and walked toward the exit. Outside, the late afternoon air was thick with humidity, the kind that made every breath taste faintly metallic. Marie sat in her car by the curb, engine running, sunglasses on. When Eleanor slid into the passenger seat, Marie arched a brow. Well? Eleanor exhaled, a sound halfway between relief and rebirth. Handled, Marie grinned. I take it the envelope landed? Like a stone through glass, Eleanor said. Marie pulled away from the curb, merging into traffic. Good. I'll have the Pinot chilled. As the city slipped past the window, Eleanor's phone buzzed, a message from Cheryl. She opened it, scanning the text once before handing the phone to Marie. Marie read it aloud, a whistle escaping her. Filed and accepted. The $28K falls under forgivable gift protection reversal. They'll be notified by end of day. Eleanor leaned back, letting the seat cradle her. Perfect, she murmured. Doesn't that mean they'll owe you? Marie asked. Every cent, Eleanor said, and the satisfaction of watching control slip right through their fingers. By the time they reached Eleanor's condo, thunder was gathering over the skyline. She stepped out of the car, rain beginning to needle her coat. Inside, she poured herself a small glass of wine and stood at the window, watching lightning fork across the distant sky. By Tuesday morning, Minneapolis wore its rain-like consequence. The streets gleamed, the sky hung low, and the city smelled faintly of wet concrete and panic, at least in one suburban cul-de-sac in Woodbury. Inside the Moore house, Kyle stood in front of his laptop, the cursor blinking over a notification he couldn't ignore. Leanne recorded. Hennepin County Property Office. The number beneath it wasn't small. Britt, he called, his voice cracking around her name. Can you come here a second? She patted in, robe tied too tight, holding a half-empty mug. What now? He turned the screen toward her. It's the house. The damn house. Her brow furrowed. What am I looking at? She filed it, he said, stabbing the touchpad. The lien, on the basement loan, says repayment required under a reversal of gift claim. Brittany blinked, uncomprehending. That's not real. She can't do that. Oh, it's real. His tone hardened, the way it did when panic disguised itself as control. The court accepted it. We owe her, Britt. $28,000 plus interest. The mug slipped from her fingers and shattered. Across town, Eleanor sat in Cheryl's office again. This time, no hesitation, no tremor. The blinds were half open, casting striped light across the desk. Cheryl slid a folder toward her. It's all finalized, she said. Every title, every trust, every account moved out of their reach. The liens are public record now. Eleanor scanned the first page, nodding once. Clean? Cleaner than a confession, Cheryl replied. Even if they try to contest, it'll be tied up for months. You've legally isolated your estate. Eleanor smiled faintly. Good. I've always been fond of clean lines. She signed the final authorization and exhaled. Something in her chest uncoiled. Years of swallowed words, quiet humiliations, unpaid debts finally evaporating like morning fog. At the same time, across the city, Kyle tried to call her. 3 times. Each one went straight to voicemail. No ring, no hesitation, just the automated calm of disconnection. The number you are trying to reach is not accepting calls at this time. He hurled his phone onto the counter. She blocked me. Brittany was pacing, her hair pulled into a messy bun that no longer looked curated. You need to fix this, she said. You're her son. She'll listen to you. Kyle gave a short, bitter laugh. You don't understand. She doesn't do talking anymore. She does doing. Brittany crossed her arms. Then maybe she's losing it. Maybe that's our angle. Kyle looked up sharply. What are you saying? Think about it, Brittany said. She's 70, right? She's suddenly rewriting wills, filing legal claims, cutting her own son out of everything. That's not rational. You want me to call her senile? I want us to protect ourselves, she snapped, before she destroys what's left. By afternoon, the gossip had already reached Brittany's social circle, one Facebook post at a time. So sad. Eleanor's not well. Money's got her confused. Pray for Kyle and Brittany during this hard family moment. Older parents can be so difficult. Eleanor didn't read any of it. Marie did. When she stopped by that evening with takeout and a bottle of white, she set her phone on the table wordlessly. They're spinning stories, she said. Eleanor arched a brow. Of course they are. People always prefer fiction to accountability. Marie sipped her wine, then tapped at her phone. Well, I added my own. Eleanor glanced over as Marie's post lit the screen. White text on black background, quiet and devastating. A mother doesn't cut ties. She just stops stitching holes. Eleanor's lips curved. You always did have a poet's cruelty. Borrowed it from you, Marie said. They clinked glasses, the sound small but defiant. Meanwhile, Aiden sat in his room, the glow of his tablet washing his face pale. He'd seen his mother's posts, his grandmother's name twisted into something unrecognizable. The comments stung even at 11. He walked downstairs, where Kyle sat at the dining table surrounded by papers and unopened mail. Dad, Aiden said softly. Kyle didn't look up. Not now, buddy. No, Aiden said, voice trembling but sure. Now. Kyle sighed. What? Aiden's hands balled into fists at his sides. You're the one who stopped being family. Kyle froze. Who told you that? No one, Aiden said. I figured it out. He turned and walked away before his father could reply. That night, Eleanor and Marie sat by the window, watching rain thread through the city lights. Marie reached over and squeezed her friend's hand. You realize they're unraveling, right? Eleanor nodded. Good. It's about time someone else did the unraveling. Thunder rolled again, low and distant, a reminder of the storm she'd already survived. By Thursday morning, the storm had cleared, leaving Minneapolis washed and glinting, as if the whole city had been scrubbed clean. Eleanor sat at her desk with a cup of coffee gone lukewarm, the hum of her printer the only sound in the condo. Across the screen, an email from Cheryl waited. Subject line: Response draft. More mediation request. Eleanor clicked it open. Cheryl's tone was as precise as ever. Respectful, calm, edged with steel. Per your son's counsel's request for mediation, we will proceed only upon written acknowledgement of prior misconduct and a formal apology from all parties involved. No apology, no discussion. This is non-negotiable. Eleanor read it twice, a quiet satisfaction blooming under her ribs. She could almost hear Cheryl's voice in the phrasing, that deliberate surgical calm that never overplayed victory but never ceded ground either. She hit print, signed the bottom of the letter herself, and scanned it back. A symbolic gesture. She wanted her own ink on the end of that sentence. Apology first, she murmured. For once. By mid-afternoon, Cheryl called. He refused. Eleanor didn't ask which he. Did he read the terms? Oh, he read them, Cheryl said dryly. His attorney said he found the tone unproductive. Eleanor smiled faintly. He always did confuse civility with surrender. What would you like me to tell them next? Cheryl asked. Eleanor looked out the window, at the quiet street, the faint shimmer of sunlight over melting snow. She thought of Aiden's face, the weight of his small hand clutching hers in that basement weeks ago. She thought of all the years she'd filled silence with generosity and called it grace. Her voice was soft, but absolute. Tell them we're done. Just like that? Exactly like that. Cheryl exhaled, almost a laugh. I'll take care of it. Thank you, Cheryl, Eleanor said, for making endings look professional. When the call ended, the quiet didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt earned. That evening, as dusk thinned across the sky, Eleanor's phone buzzed again. A different tone, lighter, shorter. A text. Aiden. Dad's mad, says you won't talk to him. Can I still see you? Her chest tightened. She read the words again and smiled, the ache in her throat both tender and sharp. She typed slowly, deliberately. Eleanor. Always. A few seconds later, the 3 dots appeared. His reply already forming. Then disappeared again. Probably caught, she thought, or interrupted. Still. The message lingered between them like a quiet promise, the kind that didn't need to be spoken twice. She set her phone down, exhaled, and turned to the window. The horizon glowed faintly gold, the last light brushing the tops of houses. Somewhere out there, her son was unraveling his story to anyone who'd listen. But here, in her silence, she had something rarer. Peace that didn't require permission. Marie stopped by unannounced around 8, wrapped in a shawl and carrying a grocery bag that clinked. Celebration supplies, she said, plunking down 2 small bottles of champagne and a box of eclairs. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. We're celebrating what exactly? The art of not answering calls, Marie said. Eleanor laughed. Really laughed this time, the sound startling in the quiet apartment. You've been eavesdropping again. I have sources, Marie said, popping the cork with practiced ease. Word is, Kyle tried to call Cheryl, tried to call you, even left a message on your building's line, all unreturned. Eleanor poured 2 glasses. Then the silence is working. Marie toasted her. To boundaries. Long may they hold. They clinked glasses and drank, the air thick with the hum of finality. After a moment, Marie leaned back, her tone softening. You know, closure doesn't need a witness. Eleanor studied her friend's face, the lines of loyalty carved deep through the humor. Maybe not, she said, but it's nice to have one anyway. Marie smiled. I'll drink to that. They sat together, the kind of silence that didn't require filling stretching between them. When Marie finally left, Eleanor stayed by the window, lights from the street casting pale ribbons across her living room. Her phone lay silent beside her. Not a single new message from Kyle, from Brittany, from anyone pretending to mediate. She liked it that way. The clock ticked. The wind outside shifted. She turned off the lamp and let the room dissolve into twilight. The morning light over downtown Minneapolis had that quiet, golden precision that made the glass buildings look cleaner than they were. Eleanor sat in Cheryl's office again. The same pale wood calm, the same soft scent of eucalyptus and coffee. But this time, the folder in front of her wasn't about clawbacks or corrections. It was about beginnings. Cheryl clicked her pen once, the small sound neat and decisive. "So," she said, "let's talk about legacy." Eleanor smiled. "That's exactly why I'm here." The file was labeled More Mentorship Scholarship Fund. The letters gleamed against the cream cover. Simple, restrained, impossible to mistake for sentimentality. "I want to build something that lasts," Eleanor said, her tone practical but warm. "Not for them." "For him?" Cheryl nodded. "Aiden." "Yes, he'll be the first recipient. College, trade, whatever path he chooses, and later, when he's ready, he'll manage it. He's earned that right." Cheryl wrote as Eleanor spoke, each sentence turning into law. "You're creating a living trust, then. And you want the rest? Condo? Investments? Holdings? To pass directly into the foundation?" "Exactly," Eleanor said. "Every cent that used to have Kyle's name on it now builds opportunity for someone else." Cheryl gave a slow, approving smile. "I can draft the structure so no outside family member can contest or control any part of it, including your son." "Good," Eleanor said, the single word carrying decades of history. "Make it airtight." By the time Eleanor left the office, the air had softened into late afternoon warmth. She walked along Nicollet Mall, the hum of the city around her. Coffee carts, street musicians, fragments of other people's lives that felt suddenly expansive. Her phone buzzed once in her bag, a notification. She didn't have to open it to know what it was. Brittany's outrage had arrived right on schedule. When she did glance, it was almost artful in its melodrama. "Heartbroken to see family choose money over love. Please pray for those lost to bitterness." Eleanor chuckled. A small, genuine sound that startled even her. She scrolled once more, saw the comment thread spiraling in sympathy, then locked her phone and slid it back into her purse. She had better things to do than correct other people's fiction. That evening, Marie arrived with her usual knock. The rhythmic triple tap Eleanor now recognized as shorthand for mischief. She carried a pie tin covered in foil and a grin that could only mean trouble. "What's this?" Eleanor asked. "Apple bourbon crumble," Marie said. "Half sugar, half vengeance." Eleanor arched a brow. "A celebratory theme?" Marie set the pie on the counter, peeled back the foil, and took in Eleanor's expression. "Let me guess. She found out." "She found out," Eleanor confirmed, pouring 2 glasses of wine. "And she's performing her heartbreak on Facebook." Marie laughed. "Of course she is. That woman treats pity like currency." Eleanor handed her a glass. "I decided not to comment." "That's growth," Marie said, clinking their glasses. "Proud of you." They sat by the window, forks in hand, watching the sun sink behind the rows of houses. The pie smelled of cinnamon and defiance. Marie took a bite, closed her eyes, and sighed. "It tastes like justice." Eleanor smiled, slow and satisfied. "Does it?" "Warm and a little messy," Marie said. "The best kind." They laughed quietly, the sound threading through the room like something unburdened. Later, when the dishes were done and the apartment had gone still, Eleanor opened the folder Cheryl had sent home with her. She reread the first page, her signature beside Aiden's name, his title marked clearly. First recipient, and future administrator. She traced her fingertip over the words, as if memorizing them by touch. Somewhere in that language, the legalese and the ledgers, she'd found what she'd been chasing all along. Control turned into creation. No more reaction, only intention. The world outside had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that carried peace rather than absence. She poured one last glass of wine and stepped out onto the balcony. From somewhere below, the city hummed with its late-night rhythm, taxis, laughter, the faint scent of rain. She raised her glass toward the skyline. "Here's to futures they never planned," she murmured. It happened on a gray Thursday, the kind of day that looked undecided, half spring, half regret. Eleanor was trimming the last of her balcony plants when the doorbell rang. No text, no warning, just the low, abrupt chime that vibrated through the condo like a challenge. She wiped her hands on a towel and opened the door. Kyle stood there, shoulders hunched beneath a windbreaker, eyes tired in a way that didn't come from lack of sleep. He looked older, not by years, but by consequence. The silence between them stretched until it hurt. "Hi, Mom," he said finally. Eleanor leaned against the doorframe. "Kyle, can I come in?" She hesitated just long enough for him to feel it, then stepped aside. The condo was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. He glanced around as though the place were unfamiliar, like he was visiting a museum of his own childhood. Artifacts behind glass, no touching allowed. He started with the easy script. "You look good. Healthier?" "I am," she said evenly. He nodded, fiddling with the zipper of his jacket. "I wanted to talk. Things got complicated." "Complicated," she repeated. "That's one word for it." He flinched but pressed on. "I just came to say I'm sorry for how everything turned out." Eleanor studied him for a long moment. "That's a convenient way to say nothing." He blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said softly, "you didn't tell me what you're sorry for." Kyle's mouth opened, then closed again. He looked down at the floor, the pause stretching. "For all of it, the miscommunication, the tension." "Tension," she said. "You think this is about tension?" "Mom, please," he said, voice cracking now. "I know I messed up. I just want to make things right." Eleanor folded her arms, gaze steady but not cruel. "Do you know why I'm hurt, Kyle?" He hesitated, searching for an answer. The silence that followed was long enough to make it clear he didn't have one. When he finally spoke, it was small. "Because of the money?" Eleanor smiled, not mockingly, but with a kind of sad astonishment. "No, Kyle. The money was just a mirror. It showed me what I hadn't wanted to see." He frowned, confused. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," she said, her tone calm, "that you never saw me as a person who could be disappointed, only as someone who could be useful. There's a difference." He swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to—" "I know," she interrupted. "That's what makes it worse. You never even thought about it enough to mean anything at all." The words hung between them, quiet but final. Kyle took a shaky breath. "Can't we start over? I'm trying here." Eleanor considered him, the boy he'd been flickering behind the man who stood in her living room. She almost wished she could want that. A reset. But the thing about distance was, once you saw the horizon, you couldn't go back to pretending there wasn't one. She nodded toward the chair. "Sit down." He obeyed, grateful, perhaps thinking it was a sign of truce. She sat across from him. "You want to know where things stand?" "Yes," he said quickly. "Of course." "The trust," she began, "the one you've been asking about. It's already closed." His head snapped up. "Closed?" "Yes," she said. "Every asset, every title, every clause finalized. Nothing left to dispute. Not even my name is up for negotiation." He stared at her, realization dawning in layers. So that's it? That's it. He stood slowly, the air between them thick with the weight of something unfixable. I thought, maybe you'd give me another chance. Eleanor rose too. You thought wrong. He opened his mouth again, but nothing came. Finally, he just nodded, a small broken gesture, and turned toward the door. At the threshold, he paused. For what it's worth, I do love you, Mom. Eleanor's voice was quiet. Then you should have acted like it when it mattered. The door clicked shut behind him. For a long time, Eleanor didn't move. The echo of his footsteps faded down the hall, replaced by the gentle hum of her breathing. Steady, deliberate. Then she walked to her desk, sat down, and opened the folder Cheryl had left for her last time. There, at the bottom of the page, sat one final clause. The discretionary section for final amendments. She pulled a pen from the drawer and drew a thin, unwavering line through Kyle's name. Then she initialed beside it, the ink still wet and gleaming. No hesitation, no shaking hand. When she set the pen down, she leaned back, exhaled slowly, and whispered to the empty room. Closed, indeed. Thunder rumbled faintly outside, a low, rolling echo that seemed to carry something away. The airport looked different this time. It wasn't the concrete or the crowds. Those were the same. It was her. Eleanor stood outside Terminal 1 under a bright Minnesota morning, watching planes rise into a sky that actually felt possible. The same glass doors she'd once walked through alone now reflected a woman unburdened, standing shoulder to shoulder with the person who'd helped her rewrite her life. Big day, Cheryl said, smoothing the lapel of her blazer. Bigger than they'll ever know, Eleanor replied. Inside, the terminal's conference room buzzed with the small, nervous energy of an event about to start. Banners read, "The Moore Mentorship Fund, Building Futures Through Legacy." Volunteers set up tables with coffee urns, name tags, and pamphlets printed on recycled paper. It wasn't a grand launch, but it was intentional, just the way Eleanor liked it. Aiden was there too, standing near the refreshment table, lankier now, wearing a tie slightly too big for him. When he saw her, he waved with the unguarded joy that still belonged entirely to childhood. "Grandma, they said I can hand out programs," he announced proudly. Eleanor smiled. "That makes you the most important person here." Marie appeared next, a camera slung around her neck and a mischievous glint in her eyes. "You're going to be in the paper, you know," she said. "Try to look like you didn't just overthrow a dynasty." Eleanor laughed, softly, genuinely. "I'll do my best." When it was time, Cheryl guided her toward the small stage. The microphone was simple, the backdrop unpretentious. A handful of local reporters gathered near the front rows, notebooks ready. Eleanor took her place behind the podium, her hands steady on the edge. For a heartbeat, she looked out at the faces, students, community leaders, strangers, and thought how strange it was to feel most seen by people who'd never owed her anything. "Thank you for being here," she began. Her voice carried, calm and low, like the kind of weather that warns of change rather than demands it. This fund started as an idea, a seed planted in the quiet. I wanted to honor the dignity that too often gets buried under the noise of family, expectation, and obligation. She paused, letting the room breathe with her. For years, I thought legacy meant leaving something behind, but I've learned it also means letting go. Of resentment, of repetition, of the stories that never belonged to you in the first place. Heads nodded. Phones recorded. Aiden beamed. Eleanor smiled faintly, then continued. "The Moore Mentorship Fund is for every young person who was told to wait their turn, or to settle, or to stay quiet. It's for those who build their own tables when no one offers a seat." Applause rippled through the crowd. Not loud, but honest. From the front row, a reporter raised her hand. "Ms. Moore," she said, "if I may, you've spoken beautifully about legacy and letting go. But if this fund carries your family's name, can I ask about your own family? Your children?" The room hushed. Even the camera flashes seemed to hesitate. Eleanor took a breath. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that belonged to a woman who had already buried the need to explain herself. "Some family," she said, her voice even and deliberate. "You build. Some you bury." A murmur spread across the room, half shock, half reverence. Cheryl's lips curved upward, the ghost of approval in her eyes. Eleanor went on. "Either way, you keep building. Because love isn't about who stays. It's about what you create once they're gone." The applause that followed wasn't polite this time. It was thunderous. Real. Backstage afterward, Marie found her first. She didn't say anything at first, just wrapped Eleanor in a fierce, unfiltered hug that smelled of coffee and apples and history. "You just handed them their obituary in a sentence," Marie murmured into her shoulder. Eleanor laughed softly. "I didn't mean it as cruelty." "Oh, I know," Marie said, pulling back. "That's what makes it sting." Cheryl joined them, handing Eleanor a copy of the day's printed press release. "Congratulations," she said. "The fund is officially public. The first donations came in during your speech." Eleanor glanced at the page, her name printed above Aiden's in bold. "Let's make sure he never forgets what it's for." "We won't," Cheryl said. Marie grinned. "And now that it's official, you owe me a lunch that doesn't come out of a takeout box." Eleanor smiled. "Deal." As they left the terminal, sunlight spilled through the glass canopy, the same light that had once burned her face as she'd waited for a ride that never came. But this time, she wasn't waiting. A car pulled up to the curb. Not an Uber, not a favor owed. Just Cheryl's sedan, calm and waiting, the back seat piled with pamphlets and promise. Eleanor opened the door herself and slid in beside Marie, the sound of her laughter mingling with the hum of the city outside. Autumn had returned to Minneapolis wearing its full, unapologetic color. Gold ash trees, red maples, the airport skyline gleaming under a soft October sun. Eleanor stepped off the plane at MSP with her carry-on in one hand and a worn leather tote in the other, the kind that had traveled farther than most people's courage. She didn't rush. Not anymore. The terminal smelled of roasted coffee and jet fuel, a scent she once associated with endings but now recognized as renewal. Her gait was steady, her expression unhurried, and when the automatic doors opened to the pickup lane, the noise of the world folded into something familiar and kind. Then she saw it. Aiden, taller now, nearly a young man, stood on the curb holding a handmade sign cut from poster board. The letters were uneven, drawn in thick blue marker. "Grandma." Eleanor stopped in her tracks. The crowd blurred. All she could see was him, the boy who had once whispered, "I asked them to pick you up. Mom said no." The boy who'd found his way back, sign in hand, smile wide enough to make the whole airport brighter. He waved her over, beaming. "Grandma, over here!" Her throat tightened, joy catching where grief used to live. She crossed the sidewalk, her steps light but trembling at the edges. "You didn't have to do all this," she said, laughing softly. "Yeah, I did," he said, taking her bag before she could argue. "You're kind of a big deal now." She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Oh, I doubt that." He opened the passenger door of the car, holding it wide for her. "Everyone at school knows about the fund. They call it the Grandma Scholarship." Eleanor chuckled, shaking her head. "I didn't start it to be remembered." Aiden looked at her then, the way only someone who had watched truth unfold over years could. "You will be," he said simply. "You already are." She sat in the passenger seat, the afternoon sun pooling through the windshield. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was leaving something behind. She felt like she was arriving. Again, but differently. As Aiden pulled onto the highway, she watched the skyline roll past. The same city that had once made her feel invisible now, glowing with the faint warmth of recognition. "Your mom knows you're here?" she asked. Aiden grinned. "She knows. She doesn't like it, but she knows." Eleanor smiled, that quiet, knowing kind. "Then we're even." They drove in silence for a few minutes, the sound of the tires humming a rhythm steady and certain. He spoke first. "You know what Cheryl said at the last meeting? She said I'm going to be the next administrator when I turn 18. Said you wanted me to handle the fund personally?" "That's true," Eleanor said. "It's yours to grow. Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "That you'll never let gratitude become currency. Give without letting them make you smaller for it." He nodded, serious now. "Deal." When they stopped at a light, he turned toward her. "Grandma?" "Yes, sweetheart?" He hesitated, a small reverent pause before the words. "Dad said you changed everything. That you didn't need anyone anymore." Eleanor looked out at the sun bouncing off the silver cars, her reflection mirrored faintly in the window. "I didn't stop needing people," she said softly. "I just stopped needing permission." Aiden smiled. That same half grin she'd seen in him since he was small. "That's what I meant." They laughed quietly, the air between them easy, familiar. When he pulled up to her condo building, Aiden jumped out before she could open her door. He carried her bag all the way to the entrance, the same way she'd once carried his backpack after school. She turned to him, emotion cresting slow and deep. "You made it," she whispered. "No," he said, steady and sure. "You did." Her vision blurred then, tears mixing with laughter. "Smart kid." He hugged her tight, the sign still crumpled in one hand. "I'll see you at the next event," he said, pulling back. "You're still the face of the fund." "God help them," she said with a smile. He grinned, waved once, and jogged back to the car, leaving her standing under the maple trees turning gold in the breeze. Eleanor exhaled, long and slow, her heart full, not of vengeance, but of return. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. A text from Marie. "Marie, you rewrite the whole story, one ending at a time." Eleanor smiled, typing nothing back. She didn't need to. She turned toward the glass doors, suitcase in hand, the sound of her heels steady against the pavement. "They read my text and left me waiting. So I rewrote the number they never deserved to dial."